Hi everyone, today I'm going to show you how to make a lovely floral pop-up card using card and paper you have at home, where 7 little flowers pop open to make a nice bouquet head inside a greeting card. It's a really easy and fun thing to do and gives you a nice handmade card which you can give to loved ones. All you need to do this is a few sheets of normal paper, printer's paper will do, or any upcycled paper, whether it be from magazines or flyers you've received in the post, ruler, pen, glue, scissors, and some marker pens which you can jazz up your flowers with. And then the last thing you need is some card. It can be fairly rigid, it can be packaging which you've upcycled, but a color works quite nicely, but white will also work just as well. To get started, we start by making the flower portions first. And to do this, we do this on the ordinary paper. I've got some plain printer's paper here, an A4 sheet. And we need to cut out 7 squares, all uniformly shaped and sized. So I'm going to do them 7 centimeters by 7 centimeters. So the easiest way on A4 sheets is to actually set up a grid function. So I'm going to go along the edge and just measure out those 7, 14, 21. So I've got my 7 squares of paper, 7 centimeters by 7 centimeters, and I'm now going to fold each of them. I'm going to start with the one on the right here. You want to do a fold horizontally, which you're going to open up, and then one vertically, and then the 2 diagonals as well. So I fold them back over themselves just to reinforce them. So we've got some nice decent fold lines. Let me just get the diagonal. And what you're going to do is you're going to do this to every single one of them, and then we fold them up. We fold them in a concertina fashion so that we can start to cut out some nice petal shapes for our flower. So I've done the last one here. I'll just open it up, and you can see that I've got all the fold lines that I need for each of them. So I've got the vertical, horizontal, and the 2 diagonals. So I'm going to go ahead and do that to all 7 sheets. So I've now gone ahead and folded all of my 7 centimeter squares diagonally on both sides and horizontally and vertically. And I'm now going to show you how we fold it in the concertina style so we can start to cut our flower shapes. So I'm going to start with this one on the right. I'm going to fold it in half, and then I'm going to fold that in half one way. Now what I can do is I can just fold the triangle, but I prefer to do it the other way, which holds the structure better. So I've folded in half again, and then I'm going to look at it from the top, and I'm going to fold out the 2 triangles, one on the top and one on the bottom, so that I've got a nice concertina part. Now what's really important at this stage is to remember where the center of my square was. So if I open this one up again, there's the center. Watch where it stays when I fold it. So I'm folding in half, center, in half again, center, looking at it from the top while I remember where the center is, push those sides out. This is the center. Always remember that, because you're going to cut your petals along this side. If you were to cut it the wrong way around, your whole thing would fall apart. So I'm going to mark that up as ready to go. Because I don't want to forget where the center is, I'm going to draw my petal shape first. So your petal shape needs to run from about halfway up from the center piece. So I'm going to go from here to there, and that should give me a nice petal shape, so I'll know where to cut and I remember where the center is. And I'm going to go ahead and do the other 6 sheets. For this one I'm going to do different kinds of petals just because I think it looks really fun, but you can just do a uniform petal, and then once you've cut out this one, trace it onto your other triangles so that you've got proper uniformity if you really like that. So I've gone ahead and drawn my petal outline for each of them. In this example I'm doing lots of different ones, but one thing that's important to note is that I've kept where the petal starts and finishes at the same height from the center for each of them. So measure them against each other. That means the flowers will be very uniform in their overall appearance. So now I'm going to go ahead and cut out these petals. So I'll start with this one, nice easy one to cut. And using my scissors, I'm just going to pinch the concertina together, make sure I've worked from the center just before I cut, or else I've got to start that again. And go ahead and cut out your petal as neatly as you can, pinching all of those folds together. Once you've done it, open it up, see what it looks like, and it should form a really nice little flower shape. If it's not looking very uniform, if it looks like the petals are paired up together or have a bigger dip every second petal, simply fold it up again, do the concertina, and have a look at your curve and see if your angle is a bit sharper on one side or a bit edged over to one side or the other, and you can do a small correction, do a secondary cut here to try and correct that. Right, I'm going to go and cut all of these out and then show you what the next step is. Here are all my flower shapes all cut out now with their various different petals, and the next thing we need to do is form our flowers. So we're going to remove one petal from each of them. In my case, I can see that I've got a bit of the marker sitting out on the one where I marked it out, so I'm going to actually cut that one out. And what you're going to do is you're going to cut along that fold line and just remove a petal from each one of them. And once you've removed it, you're going to glue it together. So let me just cut this one out quickly. Once you've removed the petal, you're going to overlap the flower and glue one petal on top of the other so that you have a three-dimensional petal which will form the inside. So we're going to remove one petal from all of them so they all look like this one with a little gap at the bottom. So I've removed each of the petals from all 7 flowers, and you don't need to bin those if they don't look too bad. I've used spare ones on the front of this one just to decorate it, or you could add them somewhere on the inside. Now before we go and assemble them into 3-dimensional flowers, we can decorate them at this stage, and I'm definitely going to do that for this one. So I'm going to I've got chalk markers, you can use pencils, marker pens, whatever you've got, to just decorate the inside. So on these ones I did little stamens in the center. For these I'm actually going to apply a last burst of color coming from the center. So I'll just add that in. So I've added some color to my flowers. I've used some neon chalk markers, so they look a little bit strange on the screen, but they look really vibrant in real life. So I now need to assemble my flowers, so I've got to glue those, close that missing petal gap by gluing one petal on top of the other. So you'll see that where I've done some of the colouring in, I've left that one blank because I'm just going to put glue on it and close it up anyway. So let me start with that one. I'm going to apply glue just to the blank petal. If you are using something like PVA, don't put on too much that it squelches out the sides or takes forever to dry. Just use a small amount, enough to cover the petal nicely. So I'm going to bend it towards myself, lift up that petal in my right hand and place it directly on top of the one that I've just put the glue on, and gently pinch it together. And I'm now going to leave that to dry really nicely before I continue. I'm going to do all the others. Once you've glued all your flowers together, overlapping those 2 petals where the gap is, leave them to dry so that they're nice and solid for when we start to assemble the pop-up. The next thing you need to do is prepare your card. I've got an A4 sheet of light card, and I'm going to cut it in half. So I've got an A5 sheet, and then I'm going to fold it in half, and that'll give me my card. So my flowers have all dried and my card is folded, ready to go. Now I just need to start gluing the flowers together to form the bouquet in the center. So the first thing I want to do is I want to flatten all my flowers. So I'm literally going to push down till I have shapes that have 3 petals. So fold it in half, all of them. They may not line up perfectly, but that's fine. Depends how your concertina fell. So I'm going to flatten them all, and then I'm in a position to start gluing. So whenever we glue, I'm going to use this one as the first example. We're always going to glue, we're going to glue different petals at different times, so don't think you're going to do all of them. But whenever you do glue, you're only going to glue the very tip of the petal. And if you have done different shaped petals like myself, you don't want to do glue completely to the edge because it might slip through and stick your flower together. So you'll probably just want to do a bit in the center of that tip of the petal. Don't put any glue below the gap where the petals are formed. So it's just the central bit there where you apply the glue. So how we choose our flowers to go into the bouquet, if you've done different colors and different patterns, I find that numbering them helps you remember how to put them together. And I will also put this up on the screen once I've done it so that you can pause on the screen and remember how to assemble it. And this is the gluing pattern and the sequence in which you put them on top of each other. So just in case you have some flowers which you prefer to others or ones you want to be in the center, the ones that will be most prominent when you open it running across the center will be number 1, number 4, and number 7. So make your nicest flowers those numbers, and then the flowers that will be on the top will be number 2 and number 5, and the ones that will be underneath will be number 3 and number 6. Right, so I'm going to go ahead, and obviously we start with flower number 1. So I've got that here, and I'm going to now apply glue. Like I said before, you're applying the glue only to the tip of the petal. Because my petals have different shapes, I'm not going to go edge to edge. I'm just going to put a nice little blob in the center for it to connect to. So I am going to just put glue on the left and the right petal of flower number 1. I'm not going to do anything with the top of it. So the top remains glue free. I've just put glue on those two. Then I'm going to take number 2 and I'm going to put it on top of that on the petal on the left with its petal on the top. So I'm going to line up the center really carefully. Always make sure that that central point and the folds are lining up nicely because that's where it folds and opens up. So I've pushed that petal tip down against the glue. I'm going to take number 3, I'm going to rotate it, and I'm going to do the same but on the right hand side. So this top petal is going to go on top of the glue on the right hand side. And then most importantly, you've got to line up that central bit so that all the points come together nicely and you keep that overall shape. So I've got a little bit of glue that has squelched out the top there. If you're using paper glue, that shouldn't happen. I'm going to remove my card so I don't get glue on it. And I'm just going to remove that with my fingers. Clean that up. Alright, so I have now attached flowers 2 and 3 to 1. Okay, so it's just those tips of the petals that I've glued. I'm just checking that nothing's squelched out anywhere that's going to connect it or make it run anywhere. So I'm just going to remove if there's any excess glue that's come out anywhere. If you're using paper glue, like a Pritt stick, that shouldn't happen. So that's good. Or if you've got a really quick drying glue, that will also not be a problem. Right, so you can let it dry at this stage. It's probably quite a wise idea. And then go on to the next one. So I'm going to get my glue again. And I'm now going to glue the top 3 petals. And again, always just the tip. So I'm going to go top one on the left, center one, and the top one on the right. So again, just added a bit of glue onto the little tips there. And I'm ready to add the next one. The next one, which is going to fall in the center, like I said before, is number 4. So I'm going to put number 4 directly on top of that, and it's going to attach to all 3 petals. Line up that central point nicely over there and press those petals gently down. I've got glue squelching out again, but I'm just going to remove that with my fingers. Okay, it's worth just checking that nothing is sticking where it shouldn't stick. Something that's glue that's escaping and gone onto another layer, because you want them to all open nicely. Alright, that's looking good to me. Again, you can let this dry for a bit before you continue, but I will carry on for this demonstration. The next one I'm going to do is I'm going to color in the 4 petals that flank the top petal. So I'm going to press down. So this might look a bit confusing because those ones look like split petals, but they're not. I'm looking at the individual folds where we added originally. So I've got this one to do and this one to do, and then the one on the left and the one on the right. Again, I'm just putting a little bit of glue in the center to make connection with the other petals as I lay them down. And if you've got any excess glue, just take it off. I've got a little bit there, so I'm going to remove that. Right, so I've only applied glue to the 2 petals that fall on the right of the top petal and the left of the top petal. And I'm then on number 5 and number 6. So I'm going to rotate number 5 to the left, match up the center, and press those petal tips gently down, the 2 that have the glue. Same with number 6. Right, so I've done that. Again, I've got a bit of glue coming out. Be very careful of the excess glue, because once it all starts to, if it starts to glue on things that it shouldn't glue on, then you've got a bit of a problem. Okay, so I can see that it's still standing open like I want it to. I'm probably, if you are working with PVA glue, it really is a good idea to let it dry. So I'm just going to finish and put the last piece down, and then I'm going to let it dry standing upright so that I can see that it's got the glue in the right spots and there isn't any excess glue that's connected bits that aren't meant to be connected. So I'm going to do the last bit now, which is glue on the top 3 petals. Again, always just the tips. Remove any excess if you need to. Keep them lined up if they're moving around. Like if you've got PVA glue, it's a bit slippery and it keeps moving. And then all I've got to do is put my last petal, which is number 7, on the top there. So line up that center point, get it to sit nicely on those tips, press it down. Alright, so I have glued all my flowers together. I should still have this really nice V. So just check that everything is lined up nicely and nothing has fallen out of place. And then pick it up and start to just separate the flowers so that you've got any excess glue that might be sticking things together that are meant to be open. So you want to be able to see each little flower not glued closed on itself. Here we go. I'm quite happy now that I can see all of the flowers while they're still folded, but none of them are folded in half on themselves closed. And I'm just going to reinforce those little glued areas just with my fingertips before I leave it to dry. My little paper flower bouquet has now dried for a short while. It's probably not completely dry, but it's definitely dry enough not to move around and to open up like we need it to. So while it was drying, I just checked that I could see all flowers, that they weren't glued closed by any escaping glue, and I let them dry standing up like that. Right, so I've got that done, and now I'm just going to flatten back down to the position we ended off on when we were gluing it together, and I'm going to slide over this little crib sheet I have, which you can pause on if you're gluing, to remember which order to glue in. So stage 1, put flower 1 down, and then the coloured in bits are the gluing bits. That's where you position which one goes on next. 2 went on that one, add glue on top. 3 went on top, add glue there, add glue there. So that's a crib sheet. And then number 5 is the step we haven't done yet. So we're at this stage, and we're now going to get to the point where we insert it into our card. So I need to apply glue to the top of the 7th flower, and this is going to go inside the card. So I'm going to put just enough glue to go on the tip again, never the whole petal, and because I'm not matching it up to another petal, I can go edge to edge. And I'm then going to open up, let me move that over a bit, I'm going to open up my card, and I'm going to turn this over, or rotate it 90 degrees, and then flip it over. Okay, so I want the missing petal side of this little stack to face the seam. And I want to put that as close to the seam as I can, not completely in it, but very close to it, and also make sure that you get it centered. You might want to write your greeting card first before you finish gluing this, but because it's just easier to write once it's before it's all in. So I'm going to position it like that. I don't want the petals to get stuck in the crease, but I want it to be as close as it can be. And I'm going to put pressure down where I know that that glue is. The last place I need to apply glue is the reverse of what we did there, is this end petal, which will stick on here, and that's where it will open up from. So it's only connected in 2 small points. So I'm going to attach that last little petal, wipe off any excess glue that might escape. And I'm then going to press it down neatly, fold it nicely on top, and press it down where I know that that glue and that petal is connecting to the card. I would again leave this to dry depending on what glue you've used. I can try open it up now, but I'm just going to give it a few minutes for it to settle in, to get into the paper, the glue, and then I will show you what our end product looks like. My card's now had some time to dry off, and I'm going to show you what it looks like. So proceed cautiously when you first open it, and you might want to pinch the petals with your thumb if it's still a bit wet, but I don't think I need to in this case. And as I open it, it pops open, and I'm really happy with that. My flowers are coming out from both ends, and that is a really satisfying little pop-up card project. And then you can add some decorations onto the front. You can make similar flower patterns and apply them like I'd done in the first example that I showed you. So that is how you make a pop-up floral card, and I will leave this, I'll end off with this on the screen so that you can see it and hopefully enjoy making your own pop-up card. Thanks for watching.